This should answer the question I keep being asked. This ties in with you, Billy Carson, and Wesley Huff destroying him. No one reading Daniel would deny that Daniel's describing two distinct divine figures. If you read Daniel 7 in light of ancient Near Eastern beliefs, Daniel just presented two distinct divine figures. Let's read. The imagery of clouds, that the Son of Man rides the clouds, in this scene is significant. Why? Watch here. But by far, the most frequent use of clouds has to do with theophanies, meaning when you see the word anan, cloud, in the Hebrew Bible, most of the occurrences has to do with God riding the cloud, God appearing on a cloud or in a cloud. 58 of the 87 occurrences of anan, that word for cloud, appear in the context of God's presence. The Pentateuch especially speaks of visible manifestations of Yahweh's glory in the cloud atop Sinai and over the tent of meeting. And then she gives you the references. And his presence in the pillar of cloud guides the people through the wilderness. Again, references. Later text about the temple also refer to the cloud. Now, watch what this means. What's the significance that when the Old Testament speaks of a cloud appearing, that is reference to God's presence, God appearing, and the Son of Man riding the clouds? Here's the significance. You ready? But it is not just the presence of clouds in Daniel that is significant. We already know Yahweh, the Ancient of Days, is present in the throne room. Because who's the Ancient of Days? Yahweh. See above on 7, 9, and 10. What is particularly significant about the clouds in Daniel 7, watch the historical, ancient Near Eastern context. Because among the pagans, they too had a belief of a divine council. And among the Canaanites, because we discovered tablets from Ugarit, which is where the Canaanites, some Canaanites live. And these tablets gave us a better understanding about what they believed and their practices and customs. Right? What is particularly significant about the clouds in Daniel 7 is that someone is coming with them. Those of us outside of Daniel's context may well picture someone floating into the throne room on a billowy heap of clouds. But this is probably not what Daniel would have seen. When you tell the ancient Near Eastern people God is appearing with a cloud, it was a chariot cloud where he's coming as a warrior with his arrows or sword, not, the floating lovey-dovey hippie Jesus, like you have these Mormon depictions, right? But this is probably not what Daniel would have seen. In Daniel's ancient Near Eastern context, he would have seen someone riding the clouds like a chariot. The Old Testament speaks of Yahweh riding his cloud chariot through the heavens, and give the references, where the rider imagery is present without specifying the clouds in Psalm 65:4. And the prophets speak of Yahweh riding a cloud in judgment. Now watch the pagans, the Canaanites, from which the Israelites clashed, with whom I should say. In the wider Canaanite world, the storm god Baal was the rider of the clouds. That was one of his names. So according to the Canaanites, the one who rode the clouds was Baal, the rider of the clouds. And he came with a thunderbolt. He would strike you down with thunder because they believe Baal controlled the weather, who controlled and thus agricultural fertility. So you'd have to cry out to Baal to bless you with rains so you can have a good crop. And he was armed with a bolt of lightning. He bestowed rain on faithful worshipers. In Ugarit, a 15th century BCE city-state on the Syrian coast north of Israel, Baal was the divine hero who had defeated Yam in the sea, God's attempt to become God over the pantheon. By the way, this should answer the question I keep being asked. This ties in with you, Billy Carson, and Wesley Huff destroying him. Billy Carson is a joke, dude. Why are you shocked that someone who has some knowledge of the Old Testament, ancient Near Eastern mythology, destroyed him? He's a joke. It was you guys that made him more than he is. This is the problem with internet. People don't fact check. Oh, really? Because if you watch one snippet of Wesley Huff, when the Enuma Elish was brought up, what was mentioned? That the Old Testament is a polemic attacking the pagan mythologies of creation. Now watch here though. Here you have an ancient ballad. Did you remember, if you watch the clip, when Wesley Huff said that in the Enuma Elish, you had Tiamat, the watery planet, at war with the planet Marduk, one of the Babylonian gods, and Marduk collided, crashed into Tiamat, split her in half. One half he made the heaven, the other half he made the earth. That's their cosmology. In the ancient mythologies, these gods and goddesses would often fight each other for dominance. In the Canaanite myth, the sea god Yam, in fact, we use that word, Assyrian Chaldeans, you know the word, Yama. Well, in the ancients, they believed there was a sea god. And the name of the sea god is Yam, sea. This sea god wanted to rule over the gods. So Baal came, defeated Yam, subjugated Yam, and put Yam in its place. And because of that, Baal's father, the high god El, rewarded him by making him the king of the gods. Now, what does the Bible tell us? That these so-called gods are not really gods. They're Satan and demons that appear as gods and goddesses. Now, either these gods and goddesses inspire them to write these fables, meaning the demons and Satan who appeared as gods and goddesses told them this would happen, or they were play acting where they gave the impression they were fighting each other, or we may have a case that in the demonic realm, demons do rebel and need to be put in their place. I don't know. You understand what I'm saying? So then why do we have fallen angels? Baal would be either Satan or a high-ranking demon, and Yam would be another demon, evil spirit, fighting each other when they're all working together to deceive mankind, and they're under the authority of Satan. It's either because they invented these lies because they never had a battle, or they may have play acted pretending they're fighting to deceive the people and then taking Baal as their hero, or you have demons who don't know their position and want to outrank other demons, and they need to be put in their place and tamed. Right? So I don't know what to tell you. But guys, if you had been watching the sessions or reading the articles, you would have been able to destroy Billy Carson from just the sessions and articles that I've written. Not just me, others. But this is the problem when you guys do not go fact check. Did you never think about, okay, let me see the story of Enuma Elish. How does it sound like Genesis? All right, now, what is being said here? Now, let me not lose the point. Wendy Witter saying that the Babylonians who would have heard this proclamation and read it would have immediately associated the one like the Son of Man as Baal, the rider of the clouds, and they would have associated the Ancient of Days with El, the high god, the father of Baal. You understand what they're trying to say? What is being said here is that Daniel is actually showing the pagans it isn't Baal that rides the clouds. And El is not the father of days, because the Canaanites, their high god was named El, one of the names of the true God. He was known to be the father of the gods. He had 70 sons, and also father of years. That was one of his names, father of years. And there are stories of him having a huge male member, because these gods and goddesses were perverts. So El and Baal are like Zeus. They go around sleeping with goddesses and women. So in the context of Daniel, when you talk about the Ancient of Days, for the Canaanites, or even those who had similar beliefs to them, that would have been the high god El. Because notice here, it says, Baal's victory won him kingship among the gods, and he served as vice-regent under his father, the high god El, an aged, wise figure who presided over the world and was attended by a divine council. But what Daniel was saying is, no, your God El, he's not the true God. The true El is Yahweh. And your other God, his son, Baal, he's not the rider of the clouds. The true rider of the clouds is one like the Son of Man. Not only is Daniel affirming that the God of Israel is multi-personal, he's also attacking the gods and goddesses of the pagans, saying, your gods aren't real. It's the God of Israel who is. It's a polemic against their gods. Do you get it or no? So what he's saying is, Baal is not the rider of the clouds. The Son of Man is. El, his aged father, because in Canaanite mythology, El was called the father of gods and the father of years. What is the true God called? Ancient of days. He is not the true God. Baal is not the rider of the clouds. The true God is Yahweh, and the true rider of the clouds is the Son of Man. It's not just an affirmation that the God of Israel is multi-personal. It's a polemic. It's an attack against the pagans and their gods. Hey, Babylonians, Marduk is not God. Nebo is not God. Yahweh is. And hey, Baal, he don't ride anything. He's under the feet of the one like the Son of Man, who is Yahweh, the Son of Yahweh, the Father. So, as Wesley Huff noted, Genesis 1 is not only an accurate depiction of creation, but a polemic. Because if you don't know, let me educate you. The pagans thought their gods were brought into being. They didn't create the heavens and the earth. They were part of creation and came into being. But Genesis says, unlike your gods and goddesses that are part of creation, part of the matter that came from which they came into being, the God of Israel created the heavens and the earth, and he exists when there was no heavens and earth. It's a polemic. Do you know what group has revived the ancient pagan myths, yet masquerades as Christian? You know what group? Mormons. Let me explain why. Anyone who's familiar with pagan mythologies will tell you Zeus did not create the heavens and earth from nothing. Zeus himself came into being by his father Kronos. So the gods were part of the material creation. They were part of heavens and earth. In fact, some pagans thought that the universe always existed. So what did these gods and goddesses do? They didn't bring the heavens and earth into existence. They too came into being as part of the universe. What they did was they took already existing matter and fashioned it and formed it, rearranged it. You understand? You understand? That's what Mormons teach. Do you know that? Mormons teach God the Father was a man living on a planet. So he did not create the heavens and the earth from nothing. And he became God and has a physical body of flesh. And so he and his sons fashioned already existing matter. They did not create the heavens and the earth from nothing. Mormonism doesn't believe that. This is why in Mormonism, they don't know who the original God is. And I asked them, I go, okay, God the Father was a man, lived on a planet, and so he fashioned existing matter and shaped it to what we have on earth today. He and his sons. Yep. But that means someone brought him into being, right? Yeah. So who is the original God that caused all this? You know what the answer is? They say, we don't know. Do you know that's their answer? We don't know. Ask them. Don't believe me. Say, all right, who is the original God that caused all this? Because God the Father didn't cause all this. He was a man who became God. And they have a heavenly mother, his wife. They don't know who the original God is because that wasn't revealed to them. Now you tell me, does that sound like biblical Christianity, or does that sound like the ancient pagan beliefs of El and Zeus and so on and so forth? So the pagans, reading Daniel, would see this as a polemic. He's saying, Not your gods, it's my God. You know who the true Ancient of Days is? Yahweh. You know who the Father of years happens to be? Yahweh. You know who the rider of the cloud is? The Son of Man. Now, with that said, let's continue. Do not miss what is happening in Daniel's vision. Look what the commentator is going to say. There's a fiery scene surrounding Yahweh seated on the throne, and there's a cloud with someone writing on it. So look what she's saying. You got a fiery throne, one seating on it, that's Yahweh. But then you have a cloud and someone writing on it. Well, who is that? Well, watch. In the Old Testament, Yahweh is the one who rides the clouds. Now you see the mystery? Wait, hold on. How do you have Yahweh appearing as the Ancient of Days sitting on a throne, and then you have someone else who's not him riding the cloud, if the Old Testament says it is Yahweh who rides the clouds? See what she's doing? She's unpacking how shocking Daniel 7 is. In this single vision, there are two Yahweh figures. Damn, Gina. Do you call it, guys? The Ancient of Days on the throne, that's one Yahweh. And the cloud riding Yahweh receiving eternal right to rule. He's the second Yahweh figure. Daniel was seeing two powers in heaven. The one on the throne and vice regent, sharing Yahweh's essence and receiving everlasting dominion and power. Wow. See why I quoted her? Okay, watch her. Daniel's vision of the throne room provides a stunning portrayal of the divine council in Israelite theology. And watch the polemic against the pagans, as well as highlighting its most significant difference from other divine councils of the ancient Near East. And the Canaanite divine council, the rider of the clouds, was El's vice regent and received eternal right to rule when he defeated Yam. But Baal was a different god than El. See, they were not the same god. But watch here. In the Israelite divine council, however, the vice regent position was not filled by another god, but by Yahweh himself in another form. Now, what does Mike Heiser mean by another form? Because she's quoting Heiser. This hypostasis of Yahweh was the same essence as Yahweh, but a distinct second person. Damn, Gina. Daniel is affirming that Yahweh God is multi-personal. Wow. Israel's divine council was headed by Yahweh, also called El Elohim, but its vice regent shared the essence of Yahweh. Right? This had profound implications for understanding monotheism according to the Old Testament. Israel's divine council had a second person sharing Yahweh's essence. Exactly what was needed to understand Jesus' claim to be one with the Father in the New Testament. Then she goes on to say later on, pages 398, 399. Look, why did Jesus like to quote the Son of Man? She gives several reasons. Why was Jesus' favorite self-description the Son of Man? If you read in the Gospels, he uses the Son of Man and referenced himself more than any other title, right? Why? So she gives some possible reasons. Quote, perhaps the second reason the Son of Man was Jesus' favorite title is because it is in Daniel's vision of chapter 7 that we find the clearest Old Testament picture of the divine council, and in it, Jesus' relationship to Yahweh. Probably the truth about him that his listeners had the hardest time grasping and accepting. In Daniel's vision of the Israelite divine council, Yahweh sat at the head of the council, but shared his essence with a second power that was a distinct figure to whom he gave everlasting dominion power. This portrayal of the divine council shows that the Old Testament monotheism had room for a second person. Watch here. Perhaps sending his listeners back to the vision of Daniel 7 was Jesus' repeated invitation for people to recognize him as that second person, to understand and believe that he was one with the Father. And then she says, go read 378, 380, which we read. We know that at least Jesus' educated audience understood what he was doing and claiming to be the Son of Man. How do we know they understood him? His educated audience who are literate in the Old Testament? We know this because they charge him with blasphemy when he used the title at his trial. Jesus told the Sanhedrin, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. And then she gives the references. A clear reference to Daniel 7:13. And they all heard him claim to share the essence of the Father. Why? Because he's not the Mighty One, but sits at the right hand of the Mighty One. And he had just said he is the Son of God. The one who would ultimately exalt him, the Father exalt the Son of Man, Jesus, and give him everlasting kingdom. It was not a claim they could or would tolerate. They demanded his death. They didn't want to accept this man was that second power. So in her note, she says, any discussion of the nature of the Trinity ventures into a field of heretical landmines. I mean, you got to tread lightly and be careful, lest you espouse heresy. Watch her. Jesus will identify himself as the great I am, which means he too is Yahweh of the Old Testament. That is, Yahweh is not simply God the Father, but all of the Godhead in singular reference. What we can say without falling into heresy is that there is an internal complexity within God that was not altogether apparent in the Old Testament. Jesus can be both distinguished from God and also identified as God. And then her other note, watch here. The language of essence is loaded with later patristic theological value. But for our purposes, it means that the New Testament religious leaders understood Jesus to be claiming a specialized and exclusive relationship with God that put him on a par with him, meaning made him equal to God, God the Father. Jesus was claiming an ontological, ontos, own means being, share in the identity of Israel's God. What this means is Jesus was saying he participates and he's included in the infinite being of Israel's God. See why I wrote this post and quoted her? So that the heretics won't say, Sam, that's your interpretation. You're making stuff up, Sam. You're no scholar. You don't know the Bible, Sam. You're not a scholar. Ha, 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 ha.